What's up, guys? David with Miracle Canine Training. So today what we're going to be doing is we're going to be making a video highlighting the perks and benefits of the Ecollar. So I saw a YouTube video the other day by Ivan Blabinov. He made a fantastic video very similar to this. I decided to kind of piggyback off of the back of that video because it really highlighted how these tools, these e-collars here, can provide such an unbelievable life for some dogs and allow the freedom to be able to allow them to be dogs and like fully be enriched in their lives. So what we're going to do is we're going to go through something that I love to do with my dogs in the winter time, which is go for an off-leash hike behind my property on the closed down golf course. And we're going to be taking them out there, letting them rip, and I'm going to show you guys, one, my process of how I go about doing that, and then two, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be showing how the e-collar, through conditioning and through appropriate use, comes to become almost like a trigger or a conditioned association of like positive things happening, right? So as we get these dogs geared up, generally speaking, we should see them be getting excited because it means that we're going to do something fun, and that's the really cool thing about this tool is it's not this like negative association a lot of people have. So I'm gonna get my dogs geared up, we'll take them outside, and we're gonna start jumping into this. Everybody's got their coats on. Get my coat on. And we're gonna rock and roll here. So for everybody that is interested, I use with my dogs two dog systems. So this is the Boss system. It's Ecollar Technologies, longer range, higher powered collar. And as we get outside, I'll kind of explain why I like using this particular system as opposed to a lot of the other options. Obviously I have 4 dogs. They do sell a 4-dog system that I don't use. And like I said, we'll explain kind of the logic behind that as we cruise along. So this is one thing a lot of people always ask me, like, at what point do I give my dogs a chance to go to the bathroom? I always say before you start it is the most ideal time, that we don't have to be playing this game of constantly releasing them or guessing maybe they need to go, maybe they don't need to go. Obviously in Vinny's case here, he's getting some stuff out of his system, and then we'll start the hike. Come. So as we're exiting here, no. Come. I like to engage them in command as we're kind of approaching the area we're going to be hiking in. Obviously, Deli thought we were going to the car, so she made that mistake trying to run that way. But aside from that, I'm just going to get them to walk in this kind of informal come command with me to the area that we're going to be allowing them to go kind of run and play in. So be heading this way with them. And anytime we're doing any sort of off-leash hiking or giving those freedoms, I always say the dogs, we want them to kind of earn some of those freedoms a little bit. So I do like to engage them in some sort of kind of controlled, structured activity in the environment I'm going to be releasing them in. I find that, no, come. I find that that puts me in a position to ensure that if I need to get their attention back on me, obviously I can go about doing that fairly easily. And not have, too much risk associated with them taking off after something or whatever it may be. And they kind of know this routine for the most part, so they're generally pretty good with it. Deli likes to kind of every now and then push the boundary with it. So we give our correction where we need to, obviously, but as you see, the rest are pretty engaged and pretty good here. So once we get over this hump, we'll go ahead and release them, let them start doing their thing. So we'll come to a stop for a minute, make sure everybody stops with me. Okay. Then we'll release them, let them do their thing. Okay, Vera. And at this point, they're allowed to do literally anything they want to do. So I'm just going to monitor. Obviously, I have my e-collars in my pocket in case I need to correct for anything. But they're allowed to just kind of go off and be dogs and stretch their legs. In Vera's case here, she's the oldest of the bunch. She's, roughly 11 or so. She's got bad knees and stuff, so she's not as keen on running and exploring like she used to. But Vinny, obviously, active Malinois. Waffles, the younger one. Deli, they like kind of sniffing around, exploring and stuff. So I'm able to provide this because of the training that we have established on these dogs. And past just the training we have established on these dogs, the tools that we use. The e-collars allow us to be able to do this and not worry about you know, freaking 4 50-foot long lines, dragging around, getting tangled on things, still mentally restraining them because they know that obviously they're on them. The e-collars allow me to have them be able to truly explore nature in the way that dogs intend to. And that's one of the most beautiful parts of e-collar training in particular, and training in general is. And that's why when I saw that video that Ivan posted, in his case he has Malinois, obviously he lives on, I don't know, something like 9 acres or more, or whatever it may be, and he was highlighting the same fact of he allows his dogs to be able to just tear around and explore this field or this large piece of property with the trust in knowing that he could control them, right? They're not going to kill wildlife. They're not going to run, you know, 500 yards that way and get into the freaking, you know, street or anything like that, because I have the ability to communicate and control them as I need to. And this is just the absolute best thing in the world that you could provide for your dog, is the ability to just run and the ability to trust them enough to allow them to run and know that they're not going to be getting themselves into trouble. And I think when you allow them to explore like this without, you know, constantly micromanaging them or giving commands or, you know, saying, hey, don't sniff that stick, don't pick that up, don't do this, don't do that, I think that it really gets them into a different mindset of kind of getting in touch with nature a little bit more. So we'll just kind of hike around a little bit here and see what we get. And I'll tell you, when we do stuff like this with the dogs, when we get home for the rest of the day, they are never more like satisfied than they are when we allow them to do this. You know, leash walking, all that kind of stuff is very important, don't get me wrong. Control and structure and mental activity and stuff like that is very important, but being able to combine it with physical stimulation and activity is the absolute key. I mean, you know, a dog like Vinny in particular, or Deli, she's a big runner, you know, allowing them to just run like this. I mean, it's just imagine if you had to, you were as athletic of a being as these dogs are, and you were forced to just contain it and walk at this just slow, controlled pace, nonstop, constantly being micromanaged. That would be a really, really mentally taxing expectation. Now, we were talking about the e-collars I like using. Obviously, I have the 2 Boss collars, as opposed to, you know, the 4-dog unit or anything like that. And there's a couple of reasons why I prefer that over a lot of different other collars that they sell on the market. First and foremost, the 4-dog unit I find is just really complicated. There's so many buttons on the thing. The buttons aren't clearly labeled. The remote I'm not as comfortable with. It's shaped differently than the standard mini educators or anything like that. And you know, I find that the only way to effectively use it is if you start locking in levels. And even at that point, the process of unlocking, changing the level, relocking it in is a huge pain in the ass. So I don't like that. Additionally, there's a lot of times my wife and I go out together with the dogs. And when we do that, you know, she has 2 dogs and I have 2 dogs. And at that point, having the convenience of 2 separate remotes is easy for her to take one pair, me to take the other pair. I think the simplicity of this collar is really nice. I like the extra headroom the Boss gives you as far as the power increase. I think it's roughly a 40% power increase than, you know, the standard mini educator. It's a longer range as well. I think this is 3/4 mile as opposed to 1/2 mile. Which is just nice. It's just a little extra peace of mind. Not that the dogs are ever going to be getting, you know, a full 1/2 mile away from you, but knowing it's got that extra range, knowing it has that extra power, especially when you're dealing with working dogs, if they are in drive after something, is very convenient. So, big fan of these collars. I've been using them for a long time. And also, because of the way we train, utilizing our marker system. So you'll notice when I had to correct Deli earlier, the e-collars were in my pocket, right? They weren't even in my hand at that time. And because of the marker system we use in attaching no to a consequence, I don't ever need to have it on me where I need to worry about, like, I have all 4 buttons at the ready at any time, right? Because I could hypothetically, if Vinny made a mistake and did something I didn't want him to do, I could mark with no, that no marker is conditioned in enough where he'll stop the behavior, then I could take my time finding his remote, making sure it's at an appropriate level, and giving my correction, and we're gonna be good to go because of that. Now this is, like I said, this is their time to do what they wanna do. Generally what I'll do is as we're cruising along, somewhere in the middle, I'll practice a couple of commands. I'll make sure that I can engage them still, obviously, and kind of go from there. So we'll use now as an opportunity to do that. Come. So obviously one come command. I expect all dogs to listen to that. Down. Same with that down command. I expect all dogs to listen to that. Give the little girl a second here. No, down. There we go. So I got them all nice and engaged with me. I could focus them in very quickly. Okay. Then I'll release them, let them tear around a little bit more. So just making sure you have immediate compliance where you need it like that is really essential. A lot of people, on the first command they give after their dogs have been free for a while, they give a lot of freebies. It's like, oh, they were a little distracted, so I'll repeat the command or whatever it may be. We don't do that. When I give that initial command, if there's non-compliance of it, right away we're giving a correction for that. And that's how you really get reliability, because it's not the fourth repetition after you're in a training session with a dog that's the important repetition. It's the first repetition you need to ask regardless of what the dogs are doing, and knowing they're always gonna have one ear turned to you. That's the most important repetition. And that's really what we try to push on our clients is, you know, not that the first rep or the second rep is a little sloppy, but then the rest are perfect. It's that's the very first repetition is perfect. And again, most people out there, they're not able to provide this for their dogs, right? They're not able to get them to be able to truly engage with their surroundings in a way that, you know, nature really intends. And I think that's a big missing link. And if I think people could strive to be able to do more and more of that with their dogs, I think you're gonna find your dogs are much more fulfilled, much happier, and much less prone to having tons of behavioral issues, because you're giving them outlets for these things. You know, and certain dogs need it more than others. Like you see at this point, you know, these two and Deli, they're kind of sticking close to me. And that's not because they have to, that's not because they're scared of getting corrected or anything like that. It's simply because they're like, all right, we've checked this out. There's nothing that exciting about it. We stretched our legs. Again, she's getting older. Her stamina isn't super hot, as you'll find with most pitties. You know, and he kind of tends to just follow the group. He's a little bit more of a submissive dog. But Vinny, you see, is off fucking running and doing his thing. So this is a dog that really needs this a lot more than the other two, right? So being able to provide that for him is very important, you know, and the other two get to tag along, or the other three get to tag along and have a good time still and stretch their legs. And everybody can go home happy because of it. And notice, again, I think another thing too, I want to do a lot more of these videos where I work with my personal dogs and do day-to-day things with them that, you know, we're already doing, because it highlights how little we're micromanaging them, right? I think a lot of people think, like, as trainers, when we go out with our dogs, we're constantly asking them to do things and keeping them focused in, which is just absolutely not the case, you know? 99% of our day-to-day with these dogs is allowing them to just be dogs. That's because we've put in the hard work with the training. Now, additionally, it's a pretty chilly day out. That's why everybody has their coats on. And you'll notice when you take a pack of dogs out, certain dogs do better than others with it. So, you know, the pitties tend to be freeze babies that would be much happier just laying around the house in front of the heater, but it's still important to get them out, obviously. So we'll do another command. Come. No. Come. It's the same deal, marked with no. Was able to get my correction right off the rip for that. Down. No, down. Perfect. Okay. that'll be the last repetition that I work before we head home. We just did an entire podcast episode last week that came out yesterday. That's all on this topic of finding outlets to be able to allow your dog to be a dog. Actually, the last 2 episodes really centered around that. We talked a little bit about, everybody's needs are different, right? Like, I live in an area where obviously I have access to this pretty easily, and I'm not in like a dense city or anything where I have to worry about a lot of those types of day-to-day distractions. Obviously, when we go to the facility, we're more in a city area, so the dogs are used to that kind of environment, but predominantly, this is the kind of life that I live with my dogs, of giving them these types of freedoms. And I think that if you live in more, urban, or densely populated city areas, you've got to be able to find ways to still provide this for your dogs. Whether that's you live in New York or Chicago or downtown Cleveland or whatever it may be, find access to something like this, whether it's somebody that has a large property or whatever it may be. But just imagine this dog lived in a city and he was never able to do this, I mean, you can see just like how happy he is while he's doing it. Okay. And that's a morning hike with my dogs and what that looks like.